Hi, I'm Elliot Frisbee from Monkeynut Audiobooks. I'm delighted to be here with Penelope Swithinbank talking about the new book that she's just recorded as an audiobook, Walking Back to Happiness. It's an intriguing story, it's learning, it's perfect for if you're backpacking, if you love to travel, if you are having marital problems, if you just want to find yourself. There is so much packed in this book, and who better to speak to about this book than Penelope herself. So Penelope, I have to ask, okay, France, okay?
Yes.
All right, amazing. It was 320 miles?
I think it was 330 miles,
Wow.
550 kilometres. Though I get confused between the difference. But yes, 550 kilometres from the Mediterranean to the Atlantic.
That is amazing, absolutely amazing. So it's interesting because you're not new to travel. I mean, you have travelled through the years quite a lot. So you spent a lot of time in America. What was you doing out there?
In America, originally, well, obviously first we went on holiday, on vacation, as the Americans say. But then, for many years during the 1990s, my husband and I were privileged enough to be speaking on conferences, to teach churches there and share with pastors there about how to run the Alpha course. And so for many years we went over, I think we did about 100 conferences over the years, never guessing that we would one day end up living there and working in churches in the States. It was an amazing privilege, wonderful time.
Wonderful. So where was the connection to suddenly say, I want to walk? Because I mean, America's a big place itself, it's so much to see, but you chose France. Why France?
Well, of course, by that stage, we'd come back to England anyway. Years ago, I would think probably 30 years ago, maybe even before you were born, Elliot, I read a book by a man called Miles Morland, who was quite a well-known journalist at the time, and he wrote about a book called The Man Who Broke Out of the Bank and Walked Across France. And he had just decided, a bit of a midlife crisis I think, that he wanted to walk across France, and then he wrote the book about it. And I loved the book, because I love walking, I love France, it was good to read, and even then I thought, one day I want to walk across France too. So that was the original inspiration, I think.
So working so closely with God and the church, I initially thought that this would be very much just a spiritual based journey for you, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more. So could you tell us a little bit about the book itself, please?
Well, it is a travel log. It is the memoir or the journal of what happened on the walk and the 28 days it took us to walk that. But also, and I suppose partly because it was the instigator for this particular walk, we'd had a bad time in our marriage, and so we decided that maybe doing something like this would really help us in our marriage. So that's partly what the book is about, restoring a marriage one step at a time. But also it's about what we learned on that walk, about ourselves, about each other, about God, about other people. We did learn an awful lot in lots of different ways.
Absolutely, and I really got that because you're very, very honest in this book. Very honest. It's very touching. At some places, emotional. I mean, as I was recording it, there were some moments where I was thinking, "Oh my goodness!" There was one time I even had to stop you because I burst out laughing.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, but it's that kind of book. But you do actually see that. Would you agree if I said healing process between the marriage as it goes through? So,
Yes.
what was it that you feel was able to create that healing process between you both? And I mean, you're obviously stronger than ever now, and it's fantastic. So, what was it about that trip? What was it that healed the marriage?
Yes, and extraordinary to think that even 4 months before the walk, we had actually separated.
Oh, goodness.
And we did spend a few weeks apart, a sort of trial period to think about what was going wrong and what we needed to do about it. And then here we are in June. We arrive in France knowing that we've had these difficulties, but hoping very much that the walk will bring us back together. And I think there were 2 or 3 things in particular that stand out. We started each day by praying together and committing the day and the day's walk to the Lord. And I think that helped enormously, just praying together intentionally. And then it was a common goal. We were doing something together. And I remember saying to Kim, really quite early on in the walk, maybe even at the beginning, It used to be us against the world. We were a team and we'd lost that. And I think the walk itself put us together again as a team. It was a common goal. There were obstacles to overcome. There were moments to enjoy, moments of laughter. We became a team again, together. I remember once somebody saying, love consists not of gazing at each other, but of gazing out together in the same direction. And that, I think, is what we were doing on that walk.
Well, it's lovely that you were praying every morning. But what actually occurred to me, and everyone, when they listen to a book, they hear it their own way. But for me, was that those obstacles, could it have almost been a little test for you both, deliberately sent from the Lord to put you through those trials, because every time you never let them beat you. It was almost like that journey. Do you think there's some truth in that somewhere?
I'm sure sometimes we are allowed to go through difficulties and they are not prevented, because going through those trials can make you stronger. The picture that comes to mind is the picture of an oyster. If it gets a bit of grit in it, it can either give up and die, or it can build those layers and layers over it to produce a beautiful pearl. But it's the grit that starts the process off. And I think that's a little illustration of what can happen to us. When there are times of difficulty, when there are challenges, when something hurts or we're broken, we either give up or we learn through it that something beautiful can be produced through that. And it may be that it makes us stronger, or it gives us more love, or it gives us more understanding of other people. It can be something beautiful that's come from that original difficulty.
So is this because there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to go through it, I mean, especially with the whole pandemic we've had this year. Would you say that something like this, a trip like this, is healthy for any relationship looking just to get closer together, to connect together, getting themselves out? I mean, France or not France, but getting out, walking together, sharing these experiences. Do you think this is something that everyone could benefit from?
Well, I'm sure they could if they were able to do it, and partly because walking itself is known to be a wonderful, wonderful way of restoration and healing, time out. It's good for the body, it's good for the emotions, it's good spiritually. So just walking itself is good. But of course, not everybody can walk. There are people who, for whatever reason, can't walk, or couldn't go and do a walk across France or anywhere else. But even so, I think doing something together, that's the main thing. For us, it was a walk, and if you can do a walk, lovely, that'll be really helpful. But find something you can do together, something that will challenge you, that you can work as a team, something with a goal that you can work towards.
Absolutely. So if people did have trouble, say, walking and getting around, maybe just sitting down on a promenade, sharing those moments together, but being outside, being in the creation, would you recommend something?
I think being outside is very special, yes. There's something about being in the world that God has created and just appreciating and noticing the beauty of what's around us. And being still sometimes. Now, of course, when we were walking, it's not being still because you are walking. But there were moments when we sat down and we were still. Maybe we were having lunch. Maybe we paused at a beautiful view. There were moments when we were still. And in that stillness, I think it's more likely you hear God. I wouldn't say it's 100% certain that you will. And of course, you can hear God when you're doing anything at any time. But there's something about the stillness, and there's something about being out in nature that I think God can use to speak to us.
You mentioned that you did, you and Kim actually, who features in the audiobook as well, of course.
Does,
Kim pops up here and there.
Yes, he'd recorded his thoughts as we were walking along. He took out his iPhone and he did a little voice memo every day. And so, that's what his words are from.
It's great. He had ice cream, of course, which
He had ice cream.
I'm saying no more than that. I'm saying no more. But,
and I had coffee.
And coffee and ice cream. But you had that separation.
Yes.
But if I'm right in saying that it wasn't just a one-off talk, let's go to France. This had been on the cards for a little while, and it was stop-start. So why did you initially think about doing the walk? What happened? Why didn't you go? And then what was it that made you you go again?
Yes. Well, as I said, it was something that I'd always wanted to do for the last 30 odd years, having read a book about it. And then life, gets in the way. You have children, you have a career or whatever. And we'd never been able to take a whole month and just go and walk. And then our 40th wedding anniversary was approaching and we were coming up to retirement age. And we thought, what a wonderful way to celebrate 40th wedding anniversary or retirement. Let's go and walk across France. But then all sorts of things interfered to prevent us. For one thing, we couldn't retire immediately. We'd be running a retreat house in a marvellous 16th century building. And when we came to sell, the conservation officer had to be involved because it was a listed building. And suddenly she wanted all sorts of things changed and different and whatever. And so we couldn't sell the house and we had to find the money to do what she wanted done. So that was one issue that we weren't able to just say, let's retire, let's go and walk across France. Then came our 40th wedding anniversary. We had sold the house, relief, we'd moved, and 40th wedding anniversary, wonderful, let's go and celebrate. Only on the weekend of our anniversary, we went away with our family. My son and my husband played tennis, and my husband tore his Achilles tendon. And badly. It really was painful, and he was in a boot for 24 hours a day for several weeks, and then of course had to rebuild strength. So the walk had to be put on hold for another 18 months.
I see. Amazing. And was it your decision or Kim's decision to suddenly do the walk?
Well, both of us wanted to do it. Me because it was on my bucket list and it was something I really wanted to do. But he wanted to do it, I think, partly in order to try and say, I'm sorry for all the pain that's happened. I want to do this because I know you want to do it. And so he became my knight in shining armour. He did all the preparations of working out the daily route, where we were going to stay. He took a lot of time and effort to make it happen. And I think he did it as an offering to me, really, as a love gift.
Sure,
to
that's
make
lovely.
it possible for me.
So the book, obviously it has this very strong content for anyone going through any kind of relationship troubles, or even if they're not, and just wanting to share something, some experience together. Also for getting closer to God and seeing the wonder of creation, of course. But for me, it really lends itself to anyone who loves travel.
Well, yes, I hope so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the stories you go through, I mean, if anyone's considering backpacking, and they must have been heavy.
Well, they were quite heavy. I mean, we are ancient, and we couldn't carry, tents and all the rest of it.
Sorry, can I just say, no, you're not.
Thank you. I mean, the adolescence of old age. And you know what adolescence is like. You can do anything you want. I'm enjoying it enormously. So Kim was carrying, I think, about 20, 21 pounds plus water. And I was carrying about 17 or 18 pounds plus water and odds and ends.
So I'm guessing the first few days fine, and then what about once you're 300 miles in, I mean, their muscles have got heavier and heavier.
They did feel heavier and heavier, yes. Although, on the other side, you got fitter and fitter.
Okay.
So actually, by the end, they didn't feel that bad at all. And at the very end, we did make it. Am I allowed to say that? We did get there.
But don't go give any more, because the ending's great. So.
But we were running with our backpacks at one stage. And
now you're just showing off. But I was saying that people, anyone who loves travel, anyone who's been backpacking, anyone considering backpacking, this is a great book for them, because the experiences you'd gone through, I mean, even I've stored a few of those. I mean, basic things like the shoes. What you had to ended up having these amazing shoes and got a whole soaking feet.
Yes, well, I mean, I took my walking boots, obviously, to walk in, and I'd had them for, I don't know, a couple of years, but I walk a lot, and I lead pilgrimages, and they had walked quite a bit, those boots, but I didn't think any more about it, and I took them with me, and we walked, and we had a lot of wet weather, a lot of rain, which is most unusual in France in June. And I just assumed the water was coming in over the top of my boots. And then gradually it dawned on me, and I think Kim noticed one day, there were holes in the soles of my feet. Oh, and then the uppers are coming away from the bottom. They just gave up. Gave up.
But there's so much more with it. I mean, there was. I don't want to go into any more detail with it, but there was like angry dogs chasing you.
Yes.
There was climbing up and having to save Kim at one point.
Yes. He got stuck high up.
There were tears. There were unusual loo breaks. There was.
Yes.
It's got absolutely everything. So for me, I think anyone even just considering travel, this is a fantastic book for them.
I hope it gives them an idea of what it's like to backpack.
Well, you say about what it's like. I mean, for you personally, what were your highs? What were your lows? So what was your highlight, for example?
Well, I suppose the highlight is arriving, isn't it? So yeah, without giving too much away, the highlight was arriving. But there were other highlights too. We had some lovely meals. We met some amazing people, and saw some beautiful places. So there were a lot of highlights. There were also some dreadful lowlights, you might call them.
Go on, spill the beans. Don't go into too much detail.
Well, obviously the dog, being attacked by an Alsatian dog, was really quite scary. I love dogs, we've always had dogs, but I've never been attacked by a dog like that before, that just came charging at us.
And must be petrifying, because I mean, you hear stories.
Yes.
You know,
absolutely.
when you hear about dog attack, they're
yes.
You know.
And this was an Alsatian snarling, baring its teeth, and nobody else around. What do you do? So that was pretty scary. And then there was another occasion, I think Kim says that it's his most scary moment. There was a tree that had fallen down. It was a huge tree, and actually he couldn't get underneath. He's too big, and he decided to go over the top and climb up and get over the top of this tree. Only he suffers from vertigo, and when he got to the top, he got stuck, and he was wearing his backpack, so he was completely and utterly frozen in fear. You'll have to listen to the book to find out.
Yeah, I was going to say something else then. I'm not going to say it. You have to. So what are you hoping that people would gain from listening to your book? And of course, just to say as well, you can actually get the hard copy, which is fantastic. It's got some wonderful photos from the actual journey as well, via your website, penelopeswithinbank.com.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
So what are you hoping that people will gain?
Several things, I think, actually. A sense of the nearness of God and how God can help us through difficulties and through challenges, whether that's through the difficulty of my marriage and what we learnt through that, or whether it's in the day-to-day obstacles and challenges we face. Just knowing that God is near and God can help. But there were several other things that the walk threw up for me. They may be questions that other people have already worked through and sorted out, but they were new for me. One of them particularly was how we treat strangers.
Okay.
We were strangers and aliens in France, and these people had never seen us before. We arrive hot, sweaty, smelly, and they are so generous to us. I think the French in many ways have the reputation for not being over-friendly. I suspect that's Paris, I don't know. But where we were in the southwest of France, people were wonderful. They were so friendly, so hospitable, and would go above and beyond what you would expect. And there was one occasion where there was nowhere for us to buy coffee, and a young man invites us into his home and offers us coffee. Or somebody else gave us a bottle of wine, somebody else gave him a beer. People were so generous. Or they'd offer us to do our washing. How do I treat the stranger whom I come across? How do I regard them? Is there the fear of the unknown, or am I welcoming and entertaining angels unawares? Not that we were angels, but that's what it says in scripture. You might entertain angels unawares.
I think that's a very, very good point. Now, to finish off here, okay, so I would like you to give your top 3 bits of advice, okay, post this wonderful journey, this exciting journey.
Yes.
So let's just say, my wife and myself, we're about to go out and do this,
Yes.
okay? What 3 things would you advise post-walk?
Yes. Okay, good question. The first one is to walk with your loaded backpack a lot before you ever go on your walk.
Did you do that?
I did.
Okay.
Just get used to it. I walked around here, went out from the house with my backpack loaded with books and towels and things, just walk with your backpack and get used to it so that you know where the pockets are, you know where the zips are, and you know what it feels like to walk with your backpack. So practice. And never mind if people look at you funnily, they won't know. Just practice. So that's good. The second thing would be to realise you need a lot less than you think you need. Maybe that was just me. But actually there were things I could have left at home.
Could you give me an example?
Well, I didn't really need 2 outfits in the evening. I could have worn the same outfit every evening. Nobody else would know because we were in different places. So really I didn't need 2. The one thing I wish I had taken, on the other hand, is a thick sweater. Now you wouldn't normally think to take that to France in June, would you? But just because of the weather, and sometimes it's cooler in the evenings, I could have done with a thicker sweater on several occasions. And along that line with clothes, check your walking boots before you leave, that they've got enough life left in them.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's a wonderful book. You will enjoy it. If you have an interest in relationship, marriage, travel, France, God, getting closer to God, this is a book for you. It's absolutely fantastic. It's Walking Back to Happiness. You can find out more by visiting PenelopeSwithinbank.com. And it's been an absolute pleasure recording this book for
It's
you.
been lovely to have you come and do it. Thank you so much,
Terrific.
Elliot.
And
Great talking with you.
yeah, likewise. Available on all download sites. So go and check it out. Whatever you choose, it'll be sitting there.
Safe walking.